Inflammation and immune modulation, I think we could probably all agree to, is that inflammation is actually the underlying common theme that leads to chronic disease states. And more importantly, we are believers now with some collaborations that we have at Harvard Medical School and the University College of London, in that the issue is not so much inflammation, but our approach as a medical community has probably not been optimized. The focus for the last 30 years of clinical research has been trying to block inflammation rather than trying to modulate it or minimize it. And no attention has been focused on a new issue that we believe is absolutely critical, and that's called the resolution of inflammation. Why is that important? It's the resolution of inflammation that actually is a distinct, separate, active pathway that we now know can be managed through appropriate and targeted nutrition in a way that will help cause and address this underlying problem of chronic disease states. And so those are some of the new insights that we'll be pursuing and have been pursuing as part of the standard process of commitment to research. Who can overlook this concept of nutrigenomic profile, lifestyle, and epigenetics? You can imagine with our commitment to natural products and crops and organic farming is that our ability to influence the epigenetic expression of patients through better use of fruits and vegetables are really important. And we now know that there's this thing called, and probably everybody's familiar with, is this methylation issue that may influence the epigenetic expression of our state. We understand how to do that, but we need to learn a lot more. And so epigenetics is important for us, both in terms of how it relates to immune modulation and using new techniques in epigenetics, including a new concept that's been around for only 5 years that Standard Process has actually been leading in an industry point of view with microRNA, proteomics, and metabolomics in a way that will change how we address some underlying chronic conditions. The starting point for healthcare, as also I think we would all agree, would be digestive health and digestive function. And so we've learned quite a lot about this issue, why digestive health should be core and fundamental and the starting point of patient management. And I might add, it's no longer just about taking probiotics or as many probiotics with the highest level of activity as you can, but it really is dependent on using whole food nutrition solutions to create an anchor that will help proliferate a more positive profile of microflora. And we've kind of lost track of that as a healthcare community in that it's not about probiotics, but it's about anchoring with the right nutrition that helps proliferate the right probiotics. So that's an important concept that we'll be purveyors of. Stress, energetics, mood, anxiety, and sleep disorders in the next couple of months, we'll be introducing through Standard Process a very unique program focusing on resiliency and how to address this issue of stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety has been one of the most, I believe, overlooked components, and that if you're not interested in understanding the whole patient, you're not going to pay attention to the power of stress and anxiety and why resiliency is so important. And why is that so important? Is that if you can't control your stress and anxiety, it complicates and accentuates the problem of chronic disease states and contributes to its acceleration in further development and problems. And so resiliency, we think, is really an important area that deserves more attention, and we're committed to being able to do that. So as we move forward during the course of the year, you'll see some new diagnostic tests that we'll be talking about in nutrition therapeutic programs that are worth considering. And then the last two that we're probably really more familiar with are nutrient deficiencies and undernutrition. It might be surprising to know that that's more rampant even in the Western world and in the United States than you might believe. And it's always related to the lower nutrient density that exists or doesn't exist in our food system. And so that's an important issue that needs to be addressed. And then obviously we have been advocates even before the concept of what organic farming was all about. We've been advocates of that approach because, believe it or not, we care as much about the microbiome of our soil and the nutrient density of the soil that we grow our crops as we do about the microbiome of the patients we serve. And so it's an important advantage that we can all bring together and address these major trends in healthcare delivery. And if we can get this right, then we have the opportunity to reach more people and make nutrition even more relevant as co-therapy or adjunctive care across all of our specialties. And so during the course of today, we put together a number of talks and presentations that will highlight some of the key components that we think are important. And everything for us starts at the farm. And so you'll hear today some presentations on the important importance that agriculture and understanding farming techniques will play on improving the viability of plants and the nutrient density and the contributions they can make to making health and wellness generally easier and more effective. And so we're quite proud of that. The one thing that I think we can also probably agree is that somewhere in the last 50 years, we forgot how to spell pharmacology. So we believe pharmacology deservedly should start and be spelled with an F. And the data that we have and some of the insights that you'll hear today from a number of presentations, I think, will help re-emphasize that. The other pieces of information that you hear from our speakers today is this concept of whole food phytonutrients. And the power of phytonutrients, we believe, I personally believe, that the phytonutrients, the actives, go beyond just the vitamin and the mineral, and that phytoactives can be as important as the vitamins and minerals, and they deserve the attention that investigators here, even on this campus, and that you'll hear about, can provide for us. And so phytonutrients have been linked both as associations through epidemiological studies and more direct evidence to show direct impact on the better management or control of metabolic systems that provide an underlying issue linked to chronic health issues. And so no presentation, no standard process presentation can be complete without really a thanks to Charlie Dubois. Charlie's actually waited for this day for a number of years, and it's a commitment that he's made not only to industry, but also in particular to our practitioner partners that play such an important role in delivering better health care to patients. And so with Charlie's commitment and dedication to this cause, I think we have, as a nutrition healthcare community and practitioners of holistic practice, have a great deal of gratitude to offer Charlie and his family in particular, and standard process in general. So with that, let's move on to the seminar topics. You'll be hearing a number of different talks talking about really discovering the therapeutic properties of whole food and nutrition. We'll look at sustainable agriculture that supports healthy nutrition. Trying to figure out and agree with some alignment is how do we integrate nutrition so it can be effective co-therapy of all of our practice modalities beyond nutrition delivery. And then we'll look at specialized conditions and some new research insights that Standard Process in particular has been working on with some collaborations on how do you maximize what we know as a nutrient profile of plants and the crops that we grow as a way to better influence healthcare. And then at the end of the day, we'll spend some time in a cross-practitioner panel to be able to talk about what are the insights that are important to practitioners of a variety of different specialties. How do they each see nutrition, and how can nutrition help support their nutrition practices and their primary practice delivery systems in a way that further improves patient outcome. So in general, we're at a fantastic and a very exciting time in healthcare. No matter what your practice specialty is, the common theme and the common glue that we can all share, at least today, is the power and the role and the influence that nutrition provides in the delivery of our specialties. One of the things that's really important to us is to try to understand as a healthcare community is what are those critical factors and trends that need to be addressed so we can anticipate the interests and needs of practitioners and at the same time then provide better and more effective packaged opportunities, if you will, to provide more effective nutrition therapy. And so we're proud to have as a major speaker and the moderator of our panel today, a gentleman that I've known for quite some time. I actually hate to say how long I've actually known Tom, so I won't. But I have to say that we're lucky to have Tom's participation today. He's the co-founder of the Nutrition Business Journal. And for those of you who don't know and even do know about the Nutrition Business Journal, it's the fundamental, most influential journal that exists in this category of nutrition, health, nutritional support, ranging from supplements to medical foods to organic and healthy food. So Tom has played an influential role over the last 25 years in influencing the direction of nutrition in healthcare. And so we're happy and pleased to have Tom presenting an overview of the trends of nutrition in healthcare. So please join me in giving Tom a warm welcome.
Thank you, John. And my name, again, is Tom Artz, and I have been in the nutrition industry for 23 years, and I'm one of those people approaching 60 right now. So I'm definitely trying to use nutrition to stay healthy and prevent some onslaught of some things that I know are in my future, and I'm going to share some of that story with you, in addition to some of the stuff that's going on in the industry. So if I could have my slides, sir, do I just go forward here? Let's see. Okay, there we go. So John asked me again, and it's hard for me to do this very quickly because I usually spend 45 minutes, an hour going through the whole nutrition industry. I think I now have about 12 minutes to do that. So I'm going to kind of sort of go through some slides about the industry itself and what's happening in the industry and some of the companies. I work with all the CEOs of all the major companies in the nutrition industry, including Charlie and John. And Charlie's one of the CEOs I have not met, so I came here to meet him, and unfortunately he's not feeling well today, so I wish him to get better quickly. Maybe we'll see him at dinner, I hope. With that, let me just start in and tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a story about myself, and I asked John if this was appropriate, and he said I was going to put it at the end. He said, why don't you put it at the beginning? So if this doesn't work, it's John's fault, okay? And then what is the nutrition industry? How big is it? I'm not going to bore you with a whole bunch of data, but I do have to put some data up to show you how important this is, and that a lot of people are clicking onto this trend, which I think is not a trend anymore. It's becoming part of everyday life for people. And then what are some trends that sort of bolster what John talked about up there? I'll talk about what's happening in the industry, and I'll give you some thoughts on the future. So my basis for this is this research I've done for the last 22 years in this journal, and we track all the companies and the topics and what's hot, what products are hot, and we track all the different trends. So it's kind of like a non-advertising based kind of business publication for the nutrition industry. And we also run a CEO summit every year with all the CEOs in the nutrition industry. So with that, let me take a risk here and start with just my favorite nutrition story throughout my whole career, which is why I got interested in nutrition. So I have a dad. How many of you have a dad who's still living and healthy? Okay. So I'm very fortunate that my dad is still kicking and doing well, but he wasn't always doing well. So at 78, he had super high blood pressure and hypertension. So I called my nutrition friends, and I have a lot of friends in the industry, and they asked me what to do, and they wanted to put him on all kinds of medication. And instead of doing that, one nutrition expert told me, what's he eating? Well, he's eating a lot of sodium, a lot of salt, a lot of hot dogs, all that kind of stuff. He grew up in New York. And so we changed his diet, thanks to his wife at the time. We were able to intervene, and we got, just this one little change changed his entire life for the next 10 years. So he's 88 today, and he's on very little medication for an 88-year-old. And I'm not saying he doesn't have issues. He has some dementia stuff that's just starting. But from that one nutrition intervention alone, which I'm not a nutrition expert as far as a doctor goes, but that to me was one of the most positive experiences I've had in nutrition. And I learned a lot about the sodium-potassium ratio, and we all eat way too much sodium, not enough potassium. All the docs in the room know that. How do you get more potassium? Fruits and vegetables. And you can also take potassium supplements. But if you change that one ratio alone, that's something that I think is very powerful. So it is about DNA, but it's a lot about diet and what we put in our bodies. So I went on an exploration myself. I did this personalized nutrition quest because I have a brother who just passed away 2 years ago at 61, and he was an athlete, and I said, I don't want that to happen to me. I'm going to find out everything I can about myself. So I did 40 vials of blood, 200 pages of reports, saliva, stool, urine samples, the whole works. I did every diagnostic test I could in the last 2 years, including poop tests, right, for the microbiome. And I learned a lot about myself, which I cannot go through all the details, but I thought I would share you my journey and then tell you what other people are doing in the industry as well. So I learned about toxicity. I had mercury, had to get that out. I learned about my genes. I have that methylation gene that John talked about. I have one of the genes that doesn't actually work as well for methylating vitamin B, so I have to take methylfolate instead of vitamin B6 and B12. All the practitioners know all about that, but that one thing alone has changed my energy levels and some of my biomarkers. I tested my microbiome. This is my microbiome on the left. My microbiome, this is the normal microbiome on the left, the phylum, and this is mine on the right. I learned that I have low-level inflammation, maybe a little bit of leaky gut, a little bit of candida, so I'm on a prebiotic, fiber, probiotic protocol right now. I haven't retested, so I don't know if that's working. And this is what I learned. I need to give up gluten. I need to have less stress. That doesn't always work when I fly across the country on a red eye. I need to get my thyroid working better. I need to deal with my leaky gut. And I know that this journey is going to basically, hopefully give me another 30 or 40 years because I plan to be, healthy at 100 and more. So that's where I think healthcare is going. And John thought, okay, why don't you start off with your story and then let's talk about what other people are doing. So in the nutrition industry, we are growing rapidly. If you look down towards the bottom of this chart, the nutrition and natural products industry is $207 billion in revenue. It's still small relative to the healthcare system. That's what we're influencing. It's still smaller than the prescription drug industry, but it's growing at twice the rate of prescription drugs. So we believe that food is medicine. Food is the new pharma, and we can see it every single day when we look at the companies that are growing. You can look at the CPG companies that are buying nutrition companies. You can look at Nestle. They sold their confectionery business, and they're now moving into personalized nutrition and nutrition. Every food company that is on the planet has called me and said, how do we get in this industry? Who can we buy? What can we do? Pepsi, Coke, all the companies are moving into looking at their food products and looking what they're doing to their consumers and trying to rethink. Yes, they need to make money, but this is where the trend is going. So that's my message. This is the size of the industry. It's growing at 6.5%, 207 billion, as I said, added 12 billion in sales this year. And we categorize the industry, if you look at it, into natural organic foods, which is the blue, functional foods, which are foods with extra ingredients in them, like milk with probiotics or orange juice with omega-3. And then we have the supplement category in the purple, and then the green is natural living, like household cleaners and things like that. So the natural organic industry has grown 10 times the total food industry in size, in growth rate. So it's got 10 times the growth, so you can understand it's growing at, the food industry is growing at like 1%. And the natural organic food industry is growing at 7 to 8%. So you can see, in commerce, the consumers are driving this. And supplement industry is $43 billion in sales, which is what standard process plays in, and it's at a 6.1% growth. I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but I'm trying to honor all the time. So I do all the trends in the industry, and we have many trends that we follow. I'm only going to talk about 3 today, because I don't have time to talk about all of them. But we'll hopefully have some time for questions later. So whole food supplements is a big trend, and I want to put a couple slides up that in honor of standard process, because I do believe very much in whole food nutrition. Gut health, the microbiome, personalization and semi-personalization are really where the future is. And then the last trend, I probably don't have time for it, but is CBD. It's been all over the press lately. It's a controversial topic. California, it's less controversial where I'm from. In Colorado, it's become a huge industry, and this industry is going to be a fairly substantial industry in CBD, which is the healthcare, or the supplement component of it. That part of the industry is growing very fast. So here's a few slides on sort of some big trends that I see. So one of the big macro forces, and we track all these trends through the parent company that I work with called New Hope Natural Media. More consumers want their nutrition from clean, healthy food. The driving growth in categories such as natural foods grew 8.5% in 2016, and then, as I said, 7% lately. This whole grain shopper can't get all the information from food. She turns to what she sees next best source, food-derived supplements. So supplement categories benefit from this trend include whole food multis, protein powders, green powders, and herbs and botanicals, curcumin, and turmeric. How many of you take turmeric? Just I'm going to get the audience involved. So this isn't a biased audience, so you all know it. But you can go to a cocktail party with nobody that's in nutrition and you ask them if they know what turmeric is, and they don't know what it does or how to pronounce it sometimes, but they all think it's good, because that's where the conversation is going in society. So whole food supplements have sustained double-digit growth. That's better than the supplement industry. And consumers generally just want more positive ingredients in their diet. This was done consumer research, and it showed 49% want fiber, antioxidants, omega-3s, calcium. This is what they want to see in their food. This is how they're choosing products at the shelf. We mentioned the microbiome becoming a huge industry. It's still an early stage. I'm in California at UCSD there's a gentleman named Rob Knight who's sort of like the Linus Pauling of the microbiome. So occasionally I get to have lunch with him, and he's got all kinds of government money to try to really move the microbiome research to a place where it can actually move people's health. He's injected rats with one microbiome and then experimented and actually reversed obesity in rats and mice by changing their microbiome. So there is something to this microbiome. It's early in the research, but it's going to be bigger and bigger. How many of you have had your microbiome tested? See, there we only have 2 people. Okay, Priya and Tom. Okay, that's interesting. So the microbiome is in the PubMed articles. If you just look at the research, you can see it's an exponential growth. From 78 to 2010, there were 587 articles in PubMed, and just 2016, and it's still growing. That's 2 years ago almost, there's 2,557 articles. So microbiome could have a big influence on a lot of diseases as we understand it better. These are just some statistics we're dealing with in healthcare. A lot of the people that are researching the microbiome think that the microbiome can make a dent in many of those conditions. And some research has shown that a healthy gut may protect us against diseases such as Alzheimer's, heart disease, which John mentioned earlier, diabetes, and of course IBS. So the other trend I mentioned was personalization. So yesterday's it was sort of like shakes and a scale. Today it's engineered food and supplements with some basic biomarker tests. And then tomorrow there'll be sort of real-time wearable diagnostics and monitoring technologies to display these nutrients and to see how you're doing. How many of you have any kind of device on your wrist of any sort? Fitbit, Apple Watch? There's lots of devices. So as that sort of graphical interface gets easier for people, they'll be able to measure. Someday you'll just be able to get your gene readings based right on your phone. You'll get to read your genome probably someday from your phone. Right now you can do a lot of things from your phone, and there's lots of technology being developed. So I wrote an article many years ago that said the future of supplement companies is going to be in personalization. John's one of my fans and readers, so he's moving standard process in this area of personalization, and this is where the winners are going to be in the supplement category in the future. So with that, and we're customizing all kinds of nutrition. I talked about the cannabis market. I mean, the cannabis market is getting real when John Boehner actually decided to join the cannabis company. So that was a interesting fact I saw in the news in the last month. And this business is going to hit $11.7 billion across THC and CBD, and will hit $25 billion in 7 years. I just heard on the local news here this morning that we're going to add 650,000 jobs in the cannabis industry in the U.S. in the next 3 years. So it is an industry, whether you believe in it or not, or whatever your beliefs are about the science, it's still federally mandated. There's still no real federal legislation. It's still Schedule I substance, but it's legal in many states, and Donald Trump last week said he's going to back off the states, so that's even more avenue, I think, for growth in this category. I can't decide if John Boehner getting into cannabis was more interesting, or the fact that he sent a tweet message. So okay, so there's the CBD industry, and that's growing. So there's one gentleman, if you haven't heard of it, how many of you have heard of Leroy Hood? So Leroy Hood is a gentleman out of the Northwest, and he has a center like this, what we saw here today, dedicated to scientific wellness. It's called the Institute for Systems Biology. And he is a very, very accomplished entrepreneur and has been around at the founding of the genome with Craig Ventnor. And he believes that the entire history, the entire future of healthcare is going to be around this scientific wellness concept, which when you think about it is just measuring your biomarkers and then retesting the biomarkers and then making interventions in between. So he's doing that now with, he did it with 100 people initially. Now he's up to several thousand people through a company called Araval. And he believes he can transform healthcare with this scientific wellness measurement. So that's just another, there's a whole presentation on him, but I just wanted to show you guys that. And then this other concept of Alzheimer's disease. How many of you have somebody in your family with dementia or Alzheimer's like I do? Okay. So if you go to the website for the Alzheimer's Association, it says on there there's no cure. I don't believe that. I believe it's hard to reverse. I believe that if you get advanced Alzheimer's, I do believe that there is probably no cure. But if you catch it early, there are people now doing research, and if you can test your genes, these APO3/4 genes, if you have 0 copies of the 4 APO gene, you have 9% lifetime risk. If you have 1 copy, you have 30% risk. If you have 2 copies, you have over 50% risk of early onset Alzheimer's. Most people don't get their genes tested because they think there's no cure, or they think they can't reverse it. Well, there's research being done by someone that John knows very, very well called Dale Bredesen, and this concept called the Bredesen Protocol. He's a professor out of UCLA, and he is the president of the Buck Institute, and he's been working his whole life in trying to reverse early onset Alzheimer's through a protocol, and he's always written a book that's you can buy on Amazon called The End of Alzheimer's. And his concept is Alzheimer's is a functional medicine disease, has many causes. You can't have, he says no drug will ever solve Alzheimer's. It might be part of the solution. You might need a couple different drugs, but no drug individually. That's why every drug clinical test study has failed. Every single trial has not worked. Aricept is just a Band-Aid. So he's worked with many people. He's reversed early onset Alzheimer's. This is published in over 200 patients. I think he's got published now 10, and he needs to get more. People are critical of his work because he's bucking up against the system. But he's taken many patients in early onset Alzheimer's, and this is just one example of one patient, 66 years old. They measured his hippocampal volume, which is directly related to how your brain is functioning during early onset Alzheimer's. And in 1 year with this program, he went from a 17% hippocampal volume to 75%. So again, it's just N is one. I'm not here to sell Dale Bredesen's program. It needs more research, but he's recommending supplements as part of that and of those 36 holes that you need to look at for Alzheimer's. So I'm done now and had to go pretty fast so we have time for other speakers, but I believe that research like they're doing here at the center is really important for our future, and I think we're at a disruptive point right now. Most of my colleagues think that this is just the beginning of where healthcare is going. It's going to change as consumers' insurance rates go up. We'll talk about that later, and what can they do. And I believe that in the future, if you take the right side of this slide, which is all the data, computing power, social networks, mobile technology, that's a big part of this driving force of consumers being able to understand their own health through their own devices. And if they can understand their health and they can measure it themselves, then you end up with this concept in the center called personalized lifestyle medicine, which is basically diagnose, make changes, find out your genetics, find out your biomarkers, take drugs if you need drugs, take nutrition, take lifestyle therapies, and you'll improve your health in this cycle of personal lifestyle medicine. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll introduce the next speaker, and we'll try to have time for questions later. So thank you for your attention today. Sorry I had to talk fast. And I'm happy to make these slides available because John invited me all the way here from California, so I'd like to support him and Standard Process, which I think is one of the better companies in the industry. I have a son now, he's 4.5, so I'm interested in his future too. So with that, let me introduce our next speaker, who's going to talk about discovering the therapeutic properties of whole foods. Her name is Marianne Lila. I think many of you know her. She's local. I just met her. She's director of Plant for Human Health Institute here at the North Carolina State University. She's a professor there, and she's going to talk to us about therapeutic properties of whole foods. Dr. Lila.
So I thought a little bit of history. Why are we here? We're here for individualized nutrition, holistic healthcare. But why here in North Carolina? So you are sitting at the site of the old Cannon textile factory. They made Cannon towels, which were very famous throughout the United States and internationally. That lake there is the site was drained to build this core laboratory that you're sitting in now. That's the old Cannon Mills factory, 350-acre site, and everybody in the town of Kannapolis worked at the Cannon Mills. And that's what it looked like. Now this guy got involved. This is David Murdoch. And he's not related to Rupert Murdoch. David Murdoch, Dole Foods, and many other companies. And he is on the Forbes 400 list, the 139th richest man in the world. On the Forbes Global Billionaires, the 376th richest man. We're still pretty good, right? And he decided, and the history was that the Cannon Mills began at the turn of the last century, and it wasn't until 100 years later, in 1982, that David Murdoch bought the mill, the textile mill. And he wasn't the owner for very long, just from 82 until 85, and then it went on to other ownership. But during that time, those few years that he owned the mill, he developed a love of this area, and he is a zealot for health. So when Pillowtex, which was the owner of the mill at the end, ceased operations just in 2003, he wanted to do something with this site that would be his legacy to promote human health. And so he bought the site, the former Cannon Mill site. A big part of it was just demolishing the old mill, 350 acres of buildings, and detoxifying the soil because they were dying a lot of towels over the 100 years plus. And then out in that site building, the North Carolina Research Campus. So right outside the periphery of Charlotte. So we're kind of rural, but right outside the Charlotte periphery. So you can see when the mill was being, or when the campus was being built, you can see the skyline of Charlotte in the distance. So we're not very far at all from Charlotte. But that's why we're here. And with the campus, which is going through a resurgence now, the city itself, and you probably got aggravated with all the construction and you couldn't get through traffic-wise in the city because everything's blocked off. They're doing a revitalization of the city and building a ballpark and a lot of water features and a lot of new industry. So this whole campus and the city are undergoing this revitalization, and that's why we're here. So we are, again, a 350-acre campus now with 8 universities, and it's a public and private partnership. So you're now sitting in the core laboratory, and this whole campus is dedicated to health, nutrition, agriculture, biotech. That's why I said such a beautiful synergy with Standard Process, because of the mission and vision of the campus is just what we had in mind. And what Standard Process also has as their mission. We do transdisciplinary research, so we go everywhere from functional foods, whole foods, from farm to fork. We have faculty that are working in plant sciences, food sciences, nutrition, health, and coming at this whole issue of human health and whole foods from all different angles, but all with the same objectives in mind. Our institute, the North Carolina State Research Institute, is the Plans for Human Health Institute there in the foreground. And our mission and vision is innovative plant-based solutions to advance human health. And we work on everything from whole foods, functional foods, medical foods, dietary supplements, functional ingredients, and then phytopharmaceuticals, which is when one small compound from a plant is put into a pill form and taken as a pharmaceutical. But really most of our work is in that whole food end of things, because we do believe in whole foods. And you might think, okay, fruits, vegetables, they're good for you, that's just what your grandmother always told you, what's the big deal? But it's really a lot more than that, because yeah, your grandmother always told you that, but nobody knew why. And now science is finally at a point where we are able to discern what the mechanism of action is on some of these fruits and vegetables. Really what the dosages should be, can be, what proportions, what combinations are most effective. That's finally where science has put us now. Because pharmaceuticals work usually with one ingredient, and fruits and vegetables just don't act like that. There's no good interface between the two. There's no good correlation between the two. It just doesn't work. So again, pharmaceuticals usually have a single active ingredient. You can do high throughput screens to see if it is active against a certain enzyme. You have a defined dose, you have a defined clearance from the human body, but plants, no. There's going to be multiple phytoactive compounds, again, the whole food concept. There's going to be interactions, synergies, additive effects between compounds in a plant that make it extremely valuable for human health and that pharmaceuticals really can't match. And there's still a lot, even with the science, there's still a lot of undefined metabolites and human targets that we're just getting to learn now, including the microbiome. So we have a plant extract. And if you take this complex plant juice, let's say, and you start to isolate out compounds, you'll find certain categories of compounds that give you a bang, that give you a good activity for human health. And so you further isolate from that compound and further purify that compound until finally, hopefully, you get to the single constituent of the plant that gives you the big bang for the buck. That doesn't always work. In fact, it's really not the rule for plants. Usually you have to put more than one compound together to get that bang for human health. And again, the whole food concept fits into this. We take an approach that's kind of three-pronged. We do work in biodiscovery, which is looking for the plants that have impact on human health, whether they be something that's a well-known fruit or vegetable, or something that's maybe lesser known from certain parts of the world that maybe need to be known in the US. We do validation of the efficacy, so potency of a natural product. And then we work with practical delivery to consumers. So those are the three prongs. In the biodiscovery, we do a lot of work with Native Americans, Alaska Natives. We work with elders in many of the tribal groups, and looking at plant materials that have been known through traditional ecological knowledge to be important for health, through just through a long history of human use, but maybe no science behind it. And we'll focus on those plants, some of them wild, some of them not well known, and look at what their mechanism of action is, working with tribal youth and letting some of the first discoveries on the mechanisms of action be with the tribal youth. And we use very simple methods. Global Institute for Bioexploration is a group that we co-founded with Rutgers, and using simple handheld tools and 2 grams of plant material, we're able to take the plants, grind them up, bioassay them, and do simple bioassays to look at their mechanisms of action. Like, for example, in this case, it's protease inhibitors and proteases in plants, and using a simple piece of photographic film to be able to take a plant that has a protease, like pineapple juice, and it'll burn a hole right through that photographic film because it's collagen that covers the film. But a plant that has a protease inhibitor, if you mix that extract with a positive control, trypsin, which is protease, it will not burn a hole. So it's a very, very quick way for students who may not know much science going in to figure out bioactivity, a primary mechanism of action. Another one is we use a flatworm. It's not a pathogen at all, planaria, but it's a good model for pathogens. And we look at lethality, like the ability of a plant extract to kill planaria. Or planaria is really an interesting little organism because it's a good analog for wound healing. You can cut the head off of a planaria, and it'll regenerate that head right back. Just you can watch it in the over a number of days in the microscope, and that the speed of the regeneration of the little eyes and head is a good model for how quickly or how a plant extract can facilitate the wound healing process. So simple things like that for biodiscovery. They're always simple, rapid, portable, and we go out in the field with many groups to do this, and right now in 23 different countries. So the next one's bioefficacy validation, and plants, of course, have a number of different mechanisms of action and a lot of different uses that they can be put to as cosmeceuticals, as functional foods, specialty chemicals. And the primary mechanisms here are, antioxidant mechanisms, oxidative stress, inflammation. Those are mechanisms that impact a lot of chronic human diseases. So we look for these, but we also look at specific efficacy against specific diseases at the same time. And then another thing we're dealing with is how to get the message out to people, because that's really, really important. When you're doing research, if you don't get that message out, it's not really worth much. And the trouble is, we're eating now in the US about a cup and 1.8 cups a day of fruits and vegetables combined. And what we're supposed to be eating is the 5 cups a day. Why don't we do it? Why do people, even scientists, let's face it, even scientists who know better, why don't they do it? They might think it's inconvenient to work with whole foods. they get excited when they go to the farmer's market and they'll buy something and put it in their crisper in their refrigerator, forget about it. By the time they get back, it's all wilted, and then they, oh well, you know, that was a waste of time. Sometimes there's a perception that it's expensive. Some people just don't like the taste, bulk, all these reasons people don't like or don't embrace whole food concepts like they should. And the medicine just doesn't work unless you take it, and that's a problem. So what we try and do, and this is a real collaborative opportunity that we have now with Standard Process and the Innovation and Research Center, is try and find ingredients and supplements that will take care of the convenience factor and some of the other hesitations that people have about whole food, and find them palatable ways to get that to consumers in ways that they can embrace and understand, and it's not hocus pocus magic, but they can really understand the science behind it. And one of these is a simple technology that we're working with now where we take proteins, animal proteins like the whey protein that I'm showing in the back there, or plant proteins. We use rice protein, peanut, a couple of other ones. Combining that with the phytoactive compounds from fruits and vegetables, you know, the ones that are anti-carcinogenic or cardioprotective or anti-diabetic. We combine the protein and the polyphenols from plants, and it makes a flour, like a colored flour, depending on what fruit or vegetable you've used. And it's a very simple, shelf-stable format for it's shelf-stable for over a year at room temperature and keeps the bioactivity, but a way to get lightweight, simple fruit and vegetables to people to be delivered, to be mixed into a smoothie, to be used in a baked good, many other technologies like that. And we did this for NASA because they were interested in how are we going to get fruits and vegetables on a 3-month mission to Mars. So we did a project with them. We also did work with Bill and Melinda Gates on the same thing. People in Zambia, in villages in Zambia with no electricity, they have 6 months of the rainy season and plenty of fruits and vegetables, and they're doing great. Then they have 6 months of the dry season with no fruits and vegetables because no way to store them, no refrigeration. And they tend to eat nishima, which is like corn grits. That's, it's stable. They can leave it outside and it's stable. So we use this technology to get mangoes and guavas into flour that they could just mix into their nishima and have that source of nutrients. So we're trying to work, and the beauty of this campus is that we're trying to work from genes to metabolites, and you need omics technologies to decipher the codes at each level. And the top floor of this building is, each wing is a different omics technology, metabolomics, proteomics, transcriptomics, genomics, to decipher what it is in the plant that's valuable for human health, what it is in the human that makes it receptive to that plant compound or animal compound, and what are the metabolites that are formed in the human body and how bioavailable are they. Last thing I want to just talk about is we have a project that we have ongoing on this campus, Plant Pathways Elucidation. So we use those omics technologies. We bring in interns from all over the state and outside the state too. So this place is swimming with undergraduate interns in the summer. And we ask simple questions, which don't want to, whoops. They don't want to come up. Well, we ask, what does a plant make? How does it make it? And what good is that compound for human health? We try and look at the genomics of the plant, the metabolomics of when a person eats that plant and what appears in the bloodstream or the urine or the feces. And we figure that out using teams of undergraduates. It's a program that's gotten a lot of media and public interest for us, a lot of returning interns that come back every year. Young undergraduate minds are great because they're not jaded by science. They haven't learned to say that'll never work. So they'll try things, or they'll want to try things, and they will try things that maybe we would have brushed off as impossible, and yet they do work. And so it's great to get these teams of eager interns together, some who come from colleges, 2- and 4-year colleges with no science, or nothing science beyond book learning, no lab facilities. And they're able to work here in concert with our undergraduates. You had Weston Bustler giving part of the tour. Yeah, there you are. He was a leader in this for 4 years? Yeah. And it's just been a fabulous internship opportunity. So that's it. Just the plant bioactives can only work if the consumers actually will eat them, and that's what we're all about here, and that's where we're looking for this collaboration with Standard Process to bring it forward even faster. Thank you.
We, Farming Keeps You Humble, are living through yet another weather event. I took this picture last week. Yeah, and they call it the April Snowpocalypse in Wisconsin. Yeah, it's the coldest first 15 days of April ever recorded in climate history. So the greenhouses are full, and the broccoli and the celery and the kale's already, and we're waiting for the snow to melt. Yeah, and I got sick of the snow around February, so enough already. I'm gonna jump back 100 years, talk about farming a little bit. 100 years ago, the government for free would send you brochures on how to garden, how to can your own food. They say, can your vegetables to can the Kaiser. I love it. And this is when the founder of Standard Process was really going to school and formulating some of his nutritional thoughts. 3 years later, we all have pictures of our family. I love it. Along comes my grandma. Yeah, and this is Grandma Ivy, who decided to join the bell choir this Christmas at 97. And yeah, and this is her mom and dad. And when Dr. Lee was going to school, when my grandma was born, it was, they were migrant tenant farmers, so it was the Depression, the Grapes of Wrath, and all that. My grandma Zivka in this picture smoking the corn cob pipe, lived to be 95, and my grandma's 97, going strong. I asked her at Christmas, I go, how did you guys live so long? And she said, it's easy, we were really poor. And we ate all our own food, it's all we had. And she said, that's all we ever ate. So she thinks that's the secret to long life. But around a third of the people in the United States at that point were on the farm. So we jump forward 100 years, and there's less than 2% of us left. And the margins in farming have shrunk, and the profit per acre continually shrinks. And so kind of as a survival defense mechanisms, the farms keep getting bigger, and we really have pushed yield in this country, right, instead of nutritional density. So a farmer at the elevator, they're not going to test your grain and find out if it's nutritionally dense. You're going to get $3.74 a bushel, or whatever the magic price is that day. And so just to survive, we've really, really pushed these farms with a focus on yield to survive. Of course, these are Christine's personal. You might disagree with me. We could talk later after when we have the cocktails. Last month, the National Geographic published that over 75% of the Earth's land now is substantially degraded. And including the United States. You guys recognize the Corn Belt? Mm-hmm. We're pushing this land. And in Time magazine last week, they published they're experimenting with the first vegetables grown in Antarctica without soil or photosynthesis or daylight. So because they know that the Earth is starting to run out of arable land, and so we're going to start growing it on other planets. Oh, this is scary. But this is not a sad story. I am here to talk to you about our farm, and I'm very proud of it. I think we have a lot of exciting things happening. This is one of my favorite cover crops, chickweed vetch. So these wonderful guys show up at work every day, and they get in the tractor early around 6:30, and we harvest these whole plants, the whole food, for Standard Process. And so this guy's going to cut it down, this guy's coming right behind him, and he's going to pick it up off the ground, and we drive it all the way across the gravel driveway to these sheds and process it. So it doesn't go 1,500 miles from field to plate, right? We're going across the driveway. That is buckwheat. Yeah, we're going to make 135,000 gallons of buckwheat juice this year. That's a lot of buckwheat juice, even for me. So the snow better melt, is what I'm saying. We have two basic forms of processing at the farm, and basically what we're trying to do is get these beautiful whole foods with as little heat as possible down to a powder similar to what she just showed you, so we could press it in a tablet or put it in a capsule. We've been organic since 1929, which is pretty cool. And that picture my grandma showed you, everybody was organic, right? It's before atrazine and glyphosate, but it's really cool. I think that standard process has stayed that way all along since 1929. I should say, this is, oh, he did, but this is the 18th year, so I have 18 years history with standard process farming. I stole this from a soil health article and I love it. Look at the party in this dirt. So I'm hoping this is standard process, like, come on over, it's awesome here. I've never studied my gut microbiome, but I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of studies on my soil microbiome. And it's really pretty cool. If you take an electron microscope and really look at your soil, it does not look that different from the microbiome in a healthy stomach. And so it's exciting. And we really focus every day, every decision we make on the health and the viability and the vitality of this soil. And I tell everyone, I have more pictures of dirt than anyone. I have more pictures of dirt probably than anyone you'll ever meet. It's not much to be famous for, but it's all I got. So we have this beautiful, vibrant soil. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a kale in that soil? And it all begins, we soil test every single year. We know the macro and micronutritional levels of the soil, but now we are starting to do some of these other respiration tests and things. Have a very good idea of the biological life of our soil too, and I think that this is what we need to get back to make this 75% of the land arable again and productive in the world. Oh my gosh, and the rewards are just amazing. We have the nicest crops on this farm, and the soil really, honestly, this is really honestly our soil. It's a system that's bountiful and rewarding, and it works. So one of the secrets, I think, is that you have to have diversity, and in the United States, if in the Midwest, if you say, I rotate, you're a farmer, it probably means this year you planted corn, and next year you're going to plant soybeans, and next year you're going to plant corn and soybeans, and really even a farmer that thinks he's rotating is really doing a monocrop row system. And 2/3 of our organic matter and the health of the soil comes from below the soil surface. And every single solitary different type of plant has a totally different root structure. And what we're learning now is all these beautiful microbiome all prefer a different root. And so the more diversity you have in your crops, the more diversity you have in your soil. And it seems like it's getting a lot more disease resistance. We have, we're gonna grow 32 crops at the farm this year. These are the crops that will go into a supplement. But we also have a wide variety of cover crops and crops for rotation. And we don't put the same family on the same soil for at least 5 years. And in the 18 years I've been there with no fungicides, we've never had a crop disease or lost a single acre to disease on this farm. And some very sincere conventional people find that hard to believe, but we're having a lot of success. In that, with the diversity helps you with insects also, and we've only lost a crop to insects in 18 years one time, without any insecticide. So we have crucifers and cucurbids, and it's fun. It's always different. Every day is very wonderful. So we have these soil tests, and we are very well aware chemically of what's in our soil. You can amend a soil organically, but the main input at our farm is and always has been green manure or a cover crop. And so we're very, very diligent about planting these crops only to give back. And so, I'm like 5'9", and these, you can see it's up to around my hip. And we wait till it gets that tall and we turn it under with this rotavator. And we have a very wide variety of cover crops. I think that diversity in cover is very important. And so we'll usually have 2 to 6 different plants in a field and then work it under. We do use some tillage to do that. Some people that are very passionate about regenerative agriculture are worried about tillage, and I get that. But I think if you're working in green manure, it's a very healthy and viable way. We also very lightly till the soil. These are probably Brussels sprouts it looks like, to get rid of the weeds. And there's really only one way to not disturb the soil at all and grow a vegetable, and that would be to be chemically dependent. And this is the rate of glyphosate use in our country. So, Christine's personal organic perspective, I really do think that a grower can build nutritional density, soil organic matter, the carbon levels of the soil, pushing yield without glyphosate, but you have to be responsible with your tillage. Hey, I came all the way from Wisconsin, so I got to put a cow. I have a picture of a cow. So a soil scientist that I adore, he said to me once, he goes, well, Christine, we have to work the green cover crops in because why would you feed your cow on the wrong side of the fence? And a lot of no-tillers that are really doing their best to be responsible also, that the entire corn crop dies, say, and they never till the soil, but that's all carbon. It's all carbon. And so we're, to make this living soil and to have the soil health we have achieved, I think it's really important to work in the green and get the food down where the microbiotic need it. So I had R&D give me a movie. I'm like, I want a movie of my dirt, because I think that's just exciting. And a lot of the different things that they just show, it should be always, there's always something moving and living in it. It's pretty cool. So we're trying to keep every trophic level happy with this diversity of cover and crop rotation and the diverseness of it. You push yield with nitrogen, and that's the way you grow food for the world. And nitrogen pushes yield. And most farmers in America, you know, are farming with anhydrous ammonia, 28, 32%, or urea. So they're synthetically derived nitrogens. And now they're starting to figure out at the universities, hey, there's something about this synthetic nitrogen that's disrupting the mutually beneficial relationship between these plants and the microbes in the soil. And they're finding that this synthetic nitrogen, they're not sure why. This is the University of Illinois. 17 to 30% less biomass and less chlorophyll. So we are growing our nitrogen with these covers too. So the cover crops feeds the microbiome, but we're growing 100 to 300 units of nitrogen an acre to also feed the next crop. And so, like we said, diversity is so cool. So this is chickling vetch, and look at so this is a symbiotic beneficial relationship for the nodulations and the plant. So these rhizobial bacteria attach to the root, and it's very symbiotic. They both need each other. But this is a chickling vetch nodule. Looks totally different than hairy vetch, right? And this is a soybean. It's pretty cool. I mean, that picture I showed with all the different roots, everything like something different. I have a lot of nodule pictures too. It's my life. And so every day we try to focus on keeping this entire food web happy to get a nutritionally dense plant, right? It's fun. So, this regenerative, sustainable, organic way of farming, I think we have science at standard process, and we have the statistics to prove it's working. So I pulled the soil test up from 20 years ago, and I compared it to our soil test last fall. And we have grown the organic matter of the soil to standard process, just the front 4 fields that are by I can see out my window of my office. This is the front 4 fields of standard process. We've grown our organic matter anywhere from 11 to 129%, and this is significant because it's the opposite of the trend of farming, most farming. And every 1% increase in organic matter gives you another 25,000 gallons of water holding capacity. And so just those front 4 fields at standard process, in the 18 years, or 20 years since we compared these soil tests, we have an extra 3.5 million gallons of water holding capacity. This is huge for these weather events and these swings when it gets very dry. They can also prove that science knows, that increasing your organic matter also increases your nutrient holding capacity of the soil. So we've increased the soil in the last 20 years at standard process between 6 and 21%, depending on the field. Organic matter is also, we now know, super important for the health of the planet, because the carbon is organic matter are tied together, and we need to have these high organic matters to sequester the CO2. So they're thinking to sequester CO2 now, a lot of people are going to start asking you to measure your carbon in the soil, not just the other factors that have typically been measured for soil health. And the Ohio State asked us to participate in a study to see if organic agriculture was comparing to the rest of the country, and this is the standard process test compared to the national average. We're kicking butt, so yay. So focus every day of living soil versus dead dirt. It's really important, I think. So you put all this focus on making your soil the best it can be, is you gotta keep it. And when you work in all these cover crops and green manures, there still is quite a bit of surface residue too. It doesn't all go under the ground. And so all this surface residue protects the soil from raindrops, but at standard process we're very flat. It mostly protects us from wind erosion. The USDA will tell you, my first internship was doing soil loss equations for the NRCS at that time. And most farms, they consider it acceptable soil loss, and you can be in a government program if you have 5 to 7.6 tons of soil loss an acre, and the average farm in America regenerates a half a ton. Now, I stopped being able to help my daughter with her math around 6th grade. But this is not regenerative, right? If we lose 7.6 tons and grow back a half a ton. Most USDA is saying much of American farmland now has 10 years of topsoil left. If we keep up at this rate, some of the worst townships in Iowa last year lost 50 tons an acre. This is standard process crimson clover. See how nice that field is? And this is our neighbor's dirt. And this is probably more what 50 to 70 tons of topsoil loss looks like. And this is not the Dust Bowl, this is last year. So these beautiful cover crops also protect the soil. Hold it where it belongs. Those were kidney beans, and radish. Oh. We are going to have 165 acres of red beans this year. Yeah, what red bean wouldn't want to grow in that soil? So, soil health and keeping an eye on soil life gives you this beautiful aggregation too. So I really do think that you can be sustainable, build your soil, and feed the planet. It makes me really sad when people say, we believe in organic, but Christine, I don't think you can feed the planet that way. And I think standard process would be a model to say, I think we can. So since I've been there, we've grown production at the farm, the same acres, 500%. This seed corn company came and did an article on us at home to say, we could start expecting these yields out of an organic production system now. At standard process, every crop we have that has a measure beats conventional average in our state. So this is really more my comfort level. It's a very glamorous job, and strongly prefer my boots to these shoes. The year we took this picture, the county average for oats was 69 bushel, and we got 94 bushel this year. Those are nice oats. So I think it really is possible to feed the world and build your soil and grow organic matter and be sustainable. We have to really regenerate this soil. It is serious. So we're, not farming on Mars. More dirt. Another picture of my soil. It's not my soil. It's SP soil. I live a whole mile and a half away, and at night my husband and I go home and we farm. We're not very creative people, I guess. Farm all day for SP and go home and farm. But a new day is dawning. This is our Brussels sprouts last year. They're gorgeous, and it's a beautiful farm. If you ever have a chance to visit, come visit when it's warm. Yeah, because it's not that pretty in the winter. But you know what, I think the winter is important too, because it gets so cold for so long that we don't have some of the disease pressure and some of the insect pressure they have where it's warmer. And it's this beautiful do-over. I tell people, it'd be so hard to be an organic farmer in California. We get a do-over. We just get to start again every year. So I really believe, after the 20 years, 2 decades almost I've been there, that our personal vitality really has a lot to do with the soil vitality. Right, a plant can only get its nutrition from the soil it's grown in, and you have a nutritionally dense and vibrant soil, you're going to have a vibrant and a healthy plant. So That's my hubby. He works at Standard Process too. And that's a radish, I'm telling you. Isn't that nice? So, over 80% of everything in a Standard Process bottle comes from the farm. And I'm here just to promise you that we really honestly keep an eye on control from the soil all the way to the bottle. And I think it would be way cheaper for poor Charlie, I feel so bad for him today. It'd be way cheaper for him to source all this out, but they have always stayed committed to owning their own land. And it's really a very special place. My daughter's 4th grade speech was, if you are what you eat, you should know what you're eating. I know. She doesn't look like that anymore. She's almost 17, but I just love it. Yeah, so thank you very much for letting me talk a little bit about that.